All right. Welcome, you guys, to this Thursday's edition of SMM Connect. This is kind of a special one, as you can see. Typically, we're doing these remotely, but today I'm sitting here in the startup studio at Galvanize. Here in Austin, it is Austin's Startup Week, which is fun and exciting. Of course, I picked this week to get the flu or something like it. So I have yet to, I know. I'm like, we shouldn't be that close, but hopefully I'm not contagious anymore. I got it on Sunday. I'm just into the sludge by now. But anyway, hopefully I will make Austin Startup Crawl tonight, because that's kind of the big finale, and I'm excited about that. But here we have Paul O'Brien, who many of you probably know as, what were they called? Was it Paul SEO Brian, or just SEO Brian, or how did that kind of come in?
SEO Brian. I was one of those first people on Twitter.
Oh,
when
yeah.
I used to do a lot of SEO. So yes,
yeah,
read
yeah.
SEO Brian because it was cute.
and now it's stuck, and now everyone's like, oh yeah, that's the SEO guy, and you're like, oh, there's a little bit more to it than that. But that's how I think a lot of people know you around here. And I know some of you guys saw Chad's talk about a month ago. He referenced Paul when he was talking, so that goes to show he's got a reputation here in Austin for that and some other stuff. But I wanted to kind of let you talk about that, and also what you do kind of outside of that, and give kind of more holistic version of yourself.
Sure. Well, so I got that SEO background because I developed a lot of HPs, search strategies, 15 years ago. Before that, I was at Yahoo, so have a lot of old internet industry experience. Came to Austin 8 or 9 years ago and started this shift into startups for the most part, and more so the role of marketing and this experience that we need to have and provide, with not just regard to startups, but the fact that startups and startup ecosystems need a lot of support on the internet in marketing, just to get more exposure and more attention on the requirements and expectations of things like venture capital.
Yeah.
And so I do a lot of work in venture capital now with the startup ecosystem. We develop things like this studio as a way to help do that, to enable startups to have a voice through this organization called Media Tech Ventures that we launched about a year ago.
Cool. Yeah. So clearly doing a lot outside the realm, but also including that. And it's actually funny. I wanted to talk to you about this morning. I got this email from a guy named Ben Clancy, who's someone I saw speak at South by last year, and I'm on his mailing list somehow. And he sent this kind of growth hacking guide. And one of the things he said was, here are the clients that you should go after, and here are the clients that you shouldn't. And the only one in his shouldn't category was startups. He said, don't take them on. They don't have enough money. They don't know what they're doing. They're going to run out of money before they can pay you. As marketers, if you're going for, the easy wins, don't take startups on at all, which I thought was really funny, given the fact that I was about to come in here and talk to you about exactly that. Our startup clients, our tech clients, and clients pre-launch, things like that. And those, I think, for a lot of us can sometimes be our scarier clients because, of that. They don't have the customer validation, which we'll get into a little bit later.
Yep.
They don't have a lot of content. We're kind of starting with them as they are.
Right.
And that can be kind of scary. So, I don't know.
Good point. I'm excited to get into it, because that idea of growth hacking, if you think about the history and the timing of growth hacking, it emerged when digital marketing was really, really starting to get adopted, not in places like Silicon Valley and New York where they understood it, but it was starting to get adopted elsewhere where they weren't as familiar with the internet. And so this term emerged to help bridge the gap, I think, between traditional marketers, the old CMOs, the old brands, and so forth, and the digital folks who are starting to say, hang on, I don't just do online.
Yeah.
I do other things. And so I'm a growth hacker, whatever that might mean.
It's a buzzword.
And it is a buzzword. And so I'm kind of excited we're going to talk about it, because the challenge is, if you think about a startup, marketing is actually the first thing you have to do.
Yeah.
So what does that look like? And then, yes, if you're providing a service, if you are a marketer, if you're a freelancer or a consultant, how do you get a gig? How do you work with a startup when they may not yet have enough money to support you? The catch-22 is they're probably not going to get the money to support you without us involved, without you involved.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really, really good point. It's a chicken and the egg thing too. A lot of people save marketing for the last, which is kind of a crazy thing to do, because marketing is how people find out about that you exist.
Right. Right.
So today we're talking specifically about utilizing social media and digital marketing to get funding in the first place. I wanted to talk, I have an article that I can share with you guys in the chat that you just wrote talking about the strategy there. And first question I have for you, and I'll share this, let me go into this here. I'll share this with you guys in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure. Getting up close and personal.
So we're kind of starting with this commonplace concept amongst us. We know this, that content is king.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That fundamentally, as marketers, in whatever context, you're a marketer. We're in the business of creating the content, creating the stories that pertain to a business. Right. And this article was an attempt to help explain how the way that we do that and where we do that actually means a lot more than just getting an audience and reaching customers.
Yeah.
It actually sends a signal to, sends a message to partners and potential investors and so forth about whether or not you know what you're doing. And so it's this question of whether or not we're creating content in a sophisticated way, or if we're just throwing stuff out there and hoping it works.
Yeah. Okay, so how do we educate everyone on the critical role of creating content online?
Good question. The point that I think is critical that we marketers have to teach everyone, wherever we can do it, just continue to share these thoughts, is that fundamentally the content we create has to be owned by our brand, whether that's as an individual or within a business. And what I mean by that is we see other content platforms like Medium and Tumblr and Instagram and these other places where we can create content. The mistake that we often make is that we create our content there instead of creating it first on our own domain. And by domain, I mean both URL for a website, but I also just mean on our own brand, our own domain, our world. That those are channels for content. That if we're putting on something on Facebook, the thing to think about is that putting a piece of content on Facebook should be considered the same as putting it on Medium, begging the question, where does that content actually live? And to where can you direct the audience that's got an interest in what they're reading? From a Medium or a LinkedIn, if you're putting content on LinkedIn or Quora or Instagram, how do we make sure that that content there is really appreciated, not by us because we get this, but it's really appreciated by the business owners and our clients and our startups, that those are channels for content. And we need to have a strategy for how to use them after we create the content within our own domain. Why do we want to create it on our own domain? Because it's associated with a brand. Right. Because it gets slurped up by Google and continues to benefit us in search engines and so on and so forth. That doesn't happen as well when we're just creating content somewhere else.
Sure. And I think, us being heavy in social media, we can forget that our Facebook page is not our own. Our Twitter profile is not our own. We're still driving traffic to somebody else, to someone else's platform. We may be big players in that space, but we're not, so it sounds like you're a big fan of content writing, blogging, kind of your own, owning your own shit, as you will.
No, precisely that. You made a couple of good references. And when I started my career at Yahoo, the platforms were MySpace and GeoCities.
Oh, yeah.
How many of us use MySpace and GeoCities now?
I just found my MySpace page. It exists, and
I'm curious.
I'm lucky that it doesn't come up when you search my actual name, because it's like me in my 20s and I don't want it to, but it's there.
It's there, and I've probably got one.
Lurking.
but the thing to think about is now apply that same logic to a Facebook or a Medium. Right now, is Facebook going to go anywhere? No, it's not. That's not the point. It's still, though, their brand, that third party. Who knows what's going to happen to it? Make sure you control the content first, and then use those, leverage those. Businesses, and that's hopefully what we're talking about here. What we need to be thinking about as the marketers is how we teach the businesses and the startups and the founders and the executives this fact, how important this is. Because to the start of our conversation, why can't they afford us? Often, Well, because they're not doing some of these very fundamental things properly. And so they're not able to raise as much money or develop as many customers as they could, because this content that they're throwing out there is being used inefficiently or ineffectively, or lost because it's not theirs.
Yeah. And I talk a lot on this show about how, my nightmare of a client is someone who wants to hire us and to have us just start posting tomorrow, kind of according to their existing strategy or lack thereof. But we consider ourselves first and foremost strategists.
Sure.
So for us, it's very important to come in and say, what channels are we utilizing? What aren't we? We don't want to come in and just do things to do them because that's how things have been done before, or because that's what other people are doing in the industry. But we really want to take a look at it holistically and see what's the best. And yeah, of course, we're always advocating for, as much content as possible under as much control as possible. There I think there are tiers of control as far as this content. Obviously there's your own, and then underneath there are those content platforms where you can kind of control the narrative. And then there's like the scariest level, which is the narrative that's completely controlled for you from an SEO sense, and that's when you're Googling yourself and your company and things come up that you didn't write at all, or had no hand in. And that's kind of that third tier that's really scary for me and for my clients too. And so, the different kind of levels of controlling your own content, with the pinnacle being, on your own domain, under your own brand. So I like that as a best practice. Any others kind of along those?
Well, you kind of touched on it, that there is unequivocally a strategy with regard to which of these channels you use. And you can almost always tell whether or not a client, I think, a business relationship is probably going to be onerous when they come to you and say, we need to do video.
Yeah.
Well, okay, why? We got to be on YouTube. Apparently we have to be on YouTube. Everybody's doing that, right? That our job, again, has to be educating on the role that these channels have.
Right.
And appreciating that in developing photos and videos and audio and content, at the end of the day, we all want it to end up on our domain. And where I find business owners and startups tend to misunderstand social media is that they focus on it as a customer development channel. And that's often rarely the case. That, for example, if I create a piece of content for my company, for our company, am I going to share that on LinkedIn in the exact same way that I created it for a company?
Yeah.
No. But I'm certainly going to share it on LinkedIn. I'm just going to tweak it a little bit to be my personal voice, because on LinkedIn, it's me. I'm sharing it as myself, right? And so I can post that article somewhere else with a flavor that's unique to that particular channel, right? What do we do with Twitter? Well, on Twitter, we should constantly be tagging folks and hashtagging folks constantly. If you're not retweeting an article 7 times, a bunch of different ways, you're missing an opportunity. On Facebook, same thought, right? We want to apply it to the group or the context in which we're having the conversation, and alert the folks that are in that environment. That a YouTube video is one of my favorite examples. But why do folks tweet and share the video that they produced on YouTube? Post it on YouTube, absolutely. But then put it on your website, put it on your blog, and share that so that you're driving the demand and the interest and the traffic to your brand.
And we talked yesterday, we talked last week of one of the things we talked about was how Facebook really wants you to stay within Facebook. So they will ping you for sharing YouTube's content. They do not want you to go to YouTube because they don't own YouTube. So, they're going to show it to less and less. So really having things native in the platform, and very timely to talk about, and something that really, really bothers me is obviously auto feeding something from one channel to another, or, just being lazy about it and having one piece of content that you share in the exact same way across 3 platforms.
Wonderful point.
And in fact, next week we are talking to Lynn-Ann Saperstein, and her topic is sharing one piece of content across multiple platforms according to the platform to drive traffic in different ways.
Good.
So this is all very timely, and I love talking about it and could talk about it forever. So on that note, and talking, specifically about owning your own content, and another reason why is to talk about things like SEO, and how that plays into SEO, and if SEO matters.
Well, it certainly does. and the way that I've evolved my understanding of search engines, I actually started working with a search engine before I got into SEO. And so the way I've even evolved from there is in appreciating that of concern to us as marketers should be that too many businesses, too many founders, too many executives think of SEO as a channel. Like it's a thing that you do, that if I just do SEO, and it's like someone coming to you and saying, hey, apparently we need to do videos. Apparently we need to do SEO.
Yeah.
Search engine optimization is a practice.
Oh, for sure.
It's much more akin to a medical practice if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Do we know exactly what's going to work? No. Mm-hmm. Would I rather have the doctor who's trained than the person who isn't taking care of me? Yes.
Right.
If we do something wrong, a lot of things get screwed up. And we have to be conscious of everything.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just about taking your temperature. We've got to be aware of your diet and your exercise. Search engine optimization is perhaps the one thing that businesses need to most critically understand that is impacted by every single facet of their business. Their customer service affects SEO.
Oh, yeah.
So it's critical in the sense that certainly the same is true of the way we use social media, the way we create content, and based on what we're talking today, the implication to investors or venture capitalists. My favorite example of how to share this idea with some folks is a fault of my own, a mistake that I made. As I started speaking and getting to know folks here in Austin, a good friend of mine, Kyle Vallarta, once pointed out one day, you're speaking on all these panels, and when I do a search for Paul O'Brien headshot, Paul O'Brien headshot, you don't show up. He goes, I thought you did SEO. and if I look up Paul O'Brien bio, you come up because your website shows up. Right? So an image, that a photo that we might be sharing on Instagram, right, also needs to exist on this domain.
Right.
And needs to be optimized for a search engine, not in the sense of the keywords and the content related to this article that we've written, but the alt text and the title and the name of the image and so on and so forth on a URL on the website, so that as Google's crawling it, when somebody might be searching for something that is a photo related to the business, I need a picture of the team that I'm working with, and I'm going to look it up on Google. I've got someone that's going to a conference, and I'd love to see what they look like at this conference so I can meet them. They're going to look it up on Google. And if people aren't showing up, if these experiences aren't showing up, not just written words and blog posts and pages, but videos and photos and locations, addresses, maps, right, phone numbers, all of that stuff is critical in a search engine, because at the end of the day, search is, quite simply put, the way in which the world finds everything related to a business. And if we're not doing a good job of enabling that, we're honestly, we're just failing. I failed, right? We're failing to recognize that there's a customer that actually wants what we have, but can't even find it because we've not taken care of it. And the correlation between these two concepts, social media, content development, and SEO, is so intrinsically intertwined, because of course social media engagement is the new page rank, right? If we're all familiar with link building. And no, the fact of the matter is tweets and Facebook engagement does more for Google and SEO than links do today. And so the work that we're doing in social media is a critical part of the world of search engine optimization.
Yeah. And, I hear people all the time, or prospective clients that I'm speaking with, they say, do you do SEO? And that's such a weird question to me, because SEO means so many different things to so many different people. It's not, like 10 years ago where it's weird black hat stuff, but we're all doing SEO kind of every day. But, explicitly, does our agency do SEO? No, not really. We've got some people we outsource for, on-page stuff, link building, whatever it may be. But we are, in essence, kind of always doing SEO, because we're always writing content for our clients, keyword rich. We're always running audits on our clients to see kind of, what's populating for them and when. And so I talk a lot on here about holistic marketing, integrated marketing. My least favorite client is someone who says they only have a budget for me, but not for all of these other pieces, because they don't work without, we're all kind of working on it all the time.
My favorite trick with a potential new client is when they ask that question, do you do SEO?
Mm-hmm.
Is to actually just turn it back on them.
Yeah.
Well, don't you?
Right.
You're not?
Yeah.
Are you hoping that I can just come in and do all of that for you? It doesn't work that way. Who's developing your content?
Right.
Who's developing your PR? Who's doing your social media?
Exactly.
The companies that I've seen develop for search engines best are the companies in which the entire company,
mm-hmm.
on all hands, maybe not a big company, but a small business, all hands, every Monday or every Friday, goes through what they've been doing that week.
Mm-hmm.
What's sales been up to?
Right.
What was in the news?
Mm-hmm.
And the CEO, the founder, the business owner always says, all right, what's that going to do for Google? What is the implication there?
Right.
And it's a way to get the customer service team,
mm-hmm.
to get the office admin,
mm-hmm.
to be conscious of the fact that literally, quite truly, literally, everything that the business is doing is going to affect how Google works.
Yeah.
The turnaround is, aren't you doing SEO?
Right.
I can guide you. We can advise you on how it works,
right.
but we have to do it.
Right. And that comes into the fact, and that's a great play into the fact that people maybe know you as this SEO Brian, but you're really more of a CMO, because if they want you to come and do SEO, then you're probably going to guide all of the rest of these pieces as well.
Well, you're going to guide all the rest of the pieces, yeah. But the idea that I think is almost more important is that SEO is, I don't think, SEO is not actually a job title, mm-hmm. because everybody has to be doing it. So what you're hiring, what you're looking for is mm-hmm. who's the content marketer, the blogger, or the publisher, and do you in that job, do you understand how search is work?
Right.
Great. And who's going to do our social media? Right. Do you understand how search is going to work?
I like that a lot.
And you roll, who's our business analyst, right? Who's taking care of our analytics? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And is all of that built out so that we can keep an eye on what's going on with the search engines, right? That everybody has to play a role.
Right.
And so the SEO in title is really just an advisor, right? It's a strategic, here's how things work.
Or a trainer.
Here's what we got to make sure we're doing. Yep.
Yeah. Wow, I like that a lot. So cool. All right, so let's switch gears here a little bit, and then we're finally going to talk about what we came here to talk about, which is using digital marketing for these startups. Quickly, Shelly had a question.
Sure.
So if I'm posting a link to an article using an image on Instagram, I need to optimize the metadata title.
You need to optimize the metadata title, yes. Right, you're posting the image. You should be posting the image on the website first, and then sharing it to Instagram. And the metadata, right? The alt text, the title text, and by the way, even the name of the image matters. Mm-hmm. And so, don't just call it image one, call it something mm-hmm. pertinent to what it is. Mm-hmm. And appreciate that each of those data sets means something else too, right? Mm-hmm. Usually you think of the alt text as being descriptive of the image. You think of the title as being something real concise and brief, a keyword. And then the name being very literal, mm-hmm. pertaining to what the image is. That gives you a lot of different terms associated with the image. But the reason that image gets indexed so well in Google is also then the surrounding content. Mm-hmm. Is it in an article? What's the page called? Is there a title for the page? Mm-hmm. Is the URL related to that image? Mm-hmm. And then what you're doing is you're sharing it on Instagram mm-hmm. using a lot of the same terms mm-hmm. and hashtags based on those words. Mm-hmm. And the link is really only a link that can be in your Instagram title, because you can't put in a link in an Instagram post anymore that gets slurped, right? It goes in the Instagram profile. And so what's happening is then Google is seeing that image in both places, and it's able to measure the engagement on Instagram related to all these terms, mm-hmm. follow the link back to the website, and then dig into the website, find the URL, find the page that the image is on. And that's what drives the social media impact on the data for the image on your domain.
Wow, that's really interesting. That goes back to what we were talking about before, where, content is king, owning your content, and considering, Instagram to be one of these platforms that we were talking about, where just not letting all the content live on that platform because it's easier to do so.
Right.
So Shelly's asking, so we use campaign URL and break it down to a bit.ly link. Will that still work for SEO? How do you feel about bit.lys?
Yeah, I preferred branding the bit.lys.
Right. Rebrandly is one.
Yep, exactly. Go with something memorable and pertinent to the business or the person.
Yeah.
But you absolutely can use that format. Mm-hmm. Search engines know how to squeeze through whatever that shortener is and figure out what the actual link is. Cool. So that doesn't matter. And it's a good idea. as long as you brand it, right?
Yep.
It's kind of like that point of, should you be putting content on Twitter and not your own domain? Well, why would you brand Bitly? Why not brand a short URL that's something related to the business, so you start to develop some awareness of that?
Agreed. Do you know that's the one that we use? If you guys have any others that you use, put them in the chat.
Yeah.
But Rebrandly is a good one. Okay, so let's talk about syndicated content and the strategies there.
You bet. It gets back to our point about the fact that every piece of content you create on a blog can in fact live everywhere else. And most businesses don't appreciate that. A lot of businesses that I work with will point out that we don't need to be on LinkedIn. Our customers are not on LinkedIn. If you're not familiar with Quora, I'm a huge fan of Quora because I like answering questions. Every blog post you've ever written is pertinent to some question on Quora. I assure you, I guarantee it. If you're on Medium, right, should you be putting stuff on Medium? Absolutely. There's a different audience there, but think of Medium as a social network, not as a blogging platform, which is what they brand it as, because you're going to have a distinct audience on Medium. The important point is, how do we syndicate that, right? How do we do that in such a way that it works most effectively? And that's really where we become critical, that on LinkedIn, frankly, it's better to do it through your personal profile.
Absolutely.
Right? This is
I always say that here too.
This is my voice, right?
LinkedIn company pages are kind of BS.
Yeah, right. You got to focus on building a following and audience there for them to be worth it.
Yeah.
It's not. If the business owner has written the article on the blog, the business owner should be sharing that on LinkedIn in its entirety, with a link back to the original article. On a platform like Medium, the big mistake that most folks make is to not understand what a canonical URL is. And that when you syndicate to Medium, you actually want to go through the import URL, which we should have looked up so we can share it. But if you look up import to Medium, you'll find it. And what Medium does is it allows you to just import from your content, produces that content in the Medium experience, but it creates what's called a canonical URL that essentially says to search engines, this content doesn't actually exist here. We're just putting it here.
Interesting.
So the audience here can see it. The content actually exists on this URL.
So it's not seeing it as duplicate content, and it's not pinging you because of that. And I hope do you guys know about, I'm asking you, let me know in the chat if you want us to extrapolate on that. But, you definitely, like you said, you don't want to take one blog and just copy paste it across various platforms, LinkedIn Pulse, Mediums, other ones where it might seem easy to do that, because of that duplicate content.
Yep, precisely that. And at the very least, right, if you're syndicating with third-party blogs, at the very least, you have to make sure that they link back to your article, not to your website, but to your version of the article. It's not as ideal as this canonical URL structure, but it's at least a way to make sure that Google sees that this article that we've syndicated to some other blog or some other website actually really exists over here, and this is where you should be indexing it.
That's a great tip. And I have to go through all of my clients and make sure that we're doing that as well. So I'll make a note of that. Okay, so let's finally talk about what we came here to talk about. That was a lot of really, really good stuff. And I think what's going to be the most kind of technical for our audience is talking about, a lot of us work with, although this guy this morning told me not to in an email blast, startup clients, tech clients, looking for funding, pre-launch, that sort of thing, and utilizing social media correctly. Sometimes when we have pretty thin content, to get exposure, to then in turn get things like funding. So let's explore the role of marketing in the traditional sense, as far as understanding the market, and the practical sense of growth.
Sure.
How do both critically matter?
Good big question. My favorite book, let's start with this one. My favorite book is actually an old book from the 80s. Very famous economist who's passed away, involved then, called Innovation and Entrepreneurship. It's written by Peter Drucker. And he had a theory that most of us believe is not just a theory, it's a scientific theory, so it's fact, that only two things create value in a business. Innovation. Are we doing something distinct, whatever it might be? We're not talking about startups. Whatever we're doing, you could be an accountant. Are you an innovative accountant doing something a little different than your competitors?
Sure.
One. And two, marketing.
Okay.
Marketing. And he paraphrased, and marketing is actually the only one of those two things that actually creates differentiation. It was a fascinating point, but really hard to wrap your head around, right? Because here he is saying it's actually the innovation that matters. Wasn't innovation what makes things different?
Right.
Yes. But his point was that it's the marketing that understands the market, understands the competitive landscape, understands your brand, can create a distinct story and experience, user experience for the website. It's the marketing that distinguishes, if you think about it, it's really the marketing that simply distinguishes an iPhone from a Samsung phone, from an Android phone. At the end of the day, they're the exact same thing. It's the marketing that makes the difference, right? And so it's critical. It's critical in that I think the internet and digital marketing and this idea of growth hacking have enabled too many clients that we try to help, too many clients, too many business owners, too many executives to move away from the fundamental of marketing, which is that we shouldn't be doing anything as a business until we've done marketing, until we understand who our customers are, who our competitors are. I see it a lot in the startup ecosystem, and that's why I'm so passionate about it, that a startup will typically build something first, and then they come to us and say, how do I get customers? And like that SEO point, I turn that back on them. What do you mean, how do you get customers? Didn't you ask your customers first what you would build? You just thought you'd create something and hopefully people will buy it.
What pain point are you filling here?
Precisely, right? And what would you pay for it? And where would we engage with you? How would we reach you? Right. Marketing is the very, very first thing that a company or business needs to do. And if a business exists already, we as service providers have to be pushing our potential clients in that direction, right? Have you done marketing yet? And the answer better be yes. Usually it's not, but yes. Because if they're saying, no, we haven't done marketing, odds are they don't know what it means. Because we should be able to sit down with a client and say, great, who are your customers? And how much does it cost to acquire them? And where do you find them? And where do you reach them? And if they say, we don't know,
I had a potential client tell me once that it was my job to figure that out. And it's never our job to figure that out. If someone wants you to figure out who their customer is, then they, like Andrea is saying, haven't done their market research first. And when I was in grad school, I was in this marketing class, and pretty much every class we'd get this case study about someone who's considering a big shift, whether it was an entry into the market or whatever. And we'd have to go home and figure out, kind of some aspects of their business plan. And one was this really cool tool that you could load a CD in, because this was CDs, because I went to grad school a while ago. You could load a CD in and it would send it through this mathematical. So it was all these mathematicians that had come up with this. They could send it through and they could figure out what the hits would be. And they compared it to the A&Rs and all these people who'd done all this research and what eventual radio hits had been and would be. And it had like a 99% correlation. So basically they'd come up with a way to mathematically figure out ahead of time what the big hits or big singles were going to be. And so our job was to go back and figure out, who we were going to sell this to and at what price point and whatever. And we all did that, and everyone came back and had all, then we said, okay, are we selling this to artists themselves? And everyone said no, because they don't have any money. And then we said, okay, are we selling it to A&Rs? And about half of the people thought that, half the people thought like the record execs themselves. And at the end of the day, none of us were right. It turned out this was not a markable product because it replaced the jobs of the people that we would be selling to in the first place.
And nobody talked to them to figure out if it was a good idea.
They had this amazing product, but it turned out that I still don't, this is a real product that exists that a bunch of engineers and mathematicians worked on for a long time. And I think it's like dead in the water because it's like so good that it doesn't have an audience, and the people who would buy it, this would basically take out all of the luster of everything that they do. And so anyway, that's a good example of, that market research process. And just because you have this amazing product doesn't mean that you even have an audience for it at all. But if you do, you have to know ahead of time, hopefully before before you get to the point where you're hiring a social media agency, of knowing exactly who that is so that we can then target them. That is our job, is to target, the market for our clients, but it's not our job to figure out if it exists or who they are.
Right.
Hopefully.
or rather, in a sense, we help them figure out really quickly that there isn't a market there.
Yeah.
And that's what gets frustrating. And I think that's why we all need to be a little concerned and very helpful in teaching folks that marketing has to come first, right? That you aren't hiring me, you aren't hiring this consultant or this service provider, this freelance professional. You are hiring this agency to make sure your business is successful.
Yeah.
We're not here to get you customers for something that we don't even know. Right. You haven't even figured out yet if there's actually demand for that or interest in that. That we have to work with the marketing that's been done. And our job is to do that effectively and efficiently, and then to further educate and teach the business on what else they can do.
Yeah.
Right. This idea of growth hacking, this explosion of online marketers and online media media folks who didn't really have a traditional marketing background. I hate to say it, but I think are a little bit of the challenge that we have, right? That we have these folks who may excel in search marketing, AdWords, right? They excel in search marketing, and they're enabling businesses to think that all you have to do is some AdWords. It's really easy. We just spin up some AdWords and we'll get some customers. And they're not pushing back on that a little bit and saying, hang on, why are we doing search? Do we know for what terms? Do we know what we should expect? Have we figured that out first? To determine how we should do search marketing, to determine what to expect from it. If we push back, if you think about it, if we push back, we start to create more value for these businesses. And so again, if we're not getting paid enough by clients, the reason is because they have this expectation of just these tactics that will get results. And they haven't done any of the real marketing work to figure out what's going to work. If we can educate them on that and play that role a little bit more, then they're able to support us. They're able to fuel this economy and fund us as professionals to do not just that tactic, but help throughout the organization.
Yeah. Shelly says, it's so funny. My startup client just now texted me that they created a jingle and they want to know what to do with it, but their website is completely non-functional.
Tell them to put it on Spotify.
And tell them you don't mess with Spotify. But I had a startup client, and I think I've talked about that this year as well, where, I looked at his website and it like your client Shelly's was, in my opinion, completely non-functional. And so I was very clear about what I could and couldn't do. And one of the things that I could do was to send him a lot of website traffic. And that's where, my agreement with him sort of ended, because I could take a look at his website and say, I don't think this is I don't think people are going to go through this lead capture process based on, how unoptimized this is. And he said, that's fine. Maybe the whole reason that we brought you in is so that I can take the data you send me and show it to my CTO and tell him, that we need to do this. So we sat down, we optimized some Facebook ads. We drove a ton of traffic to his website. We looked at Facebook Insights next to his Google Analytics. We saw exactly what we needed to see, which was that we were doing our jobs as social media marketers. We were sending the traffic that we promised to send, but the leads weren't converting. And fortunately, because I had set the expectations ahead of time, that wasn't something that could be thrown back on me. Right. That was exactly what we thought was going to happen. And then, we parted ways, and I assume he took that data to his CTO and used it as kind of a case study of what they needed to do. So, so speaking of social media, you mentioned early traction for a business can be as simple as a Twitter following. So let's talk about that too. What are some easy ways to understand the market? And I want to talk about that Twitter following quib, because, a lot of our clients say things like, well, just get us this many followers kind of arbitrarily. That's whole nother thing that we always talk about, what not to do and when to run away from your client screaming. But how can it be as simple as a Twitter following, and how do you kind of amplify that?
It gets back to one of our earlier points that Twitter is just a channel. It's not their domain, right? And clue you in on a little secret. I'm not going to tell you what they all are. I have 55 Twitter handles.
Oh my goodness.
Now, why on earth do I have 55 Twitter handles? Because certain people want to follow me for
Mm-hmm.
who I am, or the business for
Mm-hmm.
what it is. But then there are also concepts in the industry that we work. We work in media technology in this Media Tech Ventures organization. And in particularly, we're in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
So we have Austin Media Tech, which has nothing to do with the brand, has nothing to do with me. And what we're doing there is we're simply talking about what's going on in the media technology ecosystem in Austin. We're sharing content, we're promoting everything going on in town, and we're building an audience there, completely unrelated to the brand, the business, or the individuals involved. That's a simple way to appreciate that point, that too many businesses hope that or think that these channels are simply a source of customers. And, we all know in social media that's often rarely actually the case, right? It's a great source of an audience and fans and supporters and enthusiasts and so forth. But how many of your customers are actually on Twitter all the time ready to buy something?
Just show me the right tweet and I have my wallet ready.
And I'm going to convert, right? And so a new business, or even an existing business, frankly, could be looking at social media or Twitter as a way to explore new channels, new concepts, new interests, new products, new verticals, and building audiences out related to what they're doing indirectly, and benefiting from those audiences over time, right? Benefiting them from the point that you made about analytics, right? Benefiting from them in the sense that those audiences can be measured. You can get demographic data. You can use Google Analytics, and as you get traffic from social media, you can see where geographically, you can see where people are, you can see what they engage with. And so you can start to educate the business just based on this social media audience on where a new opportunity might exist.
Right.
Not even in social media, but you might discover, heck, look, we should be in Detroit because a lot of people in Detroit are engaging with us.
Yeah.
Or a lot of people reacted to this conference that we promoted. Maybe we should go to the conference. They seem to be really excited about that in the context of what we're doing here. And startups tend to pressure or push on the idea that customers alone are what validates a business. And you hear it in the investment community, in particular for those of you that work with startups and VCs. They want to see customer traction, customer validation. We use those words a lot. And what that tends to push people to believe or to neglect is the idea that if I could show you 10,000 fans for what I'm doing on a Facebook page, I assure you we have validation. Right? We have interest in what we're doing. Maybe we're not ready for customers yet, right? And so how can we use social media to drive validation and support for and interest in what we're doing, or the impression of, or valid proof of interest in what we're doing, even when it's not related to customers? It's not hard to do. We in particular need to do that much more so for folks, because those audiences are not just a way to start new things, but they're also a way to support, in a bigger picture, the ongoing business, right? As the business is looking to scale, as the business is looking where to invest their time and money and resources, as Amazon is looking to put their second headquarters somewhere here in Austin, right? Put their second headquarters.
Are you on that train?
I'm on that train. I'm still on that train.
So many people are off that train because 160 people move here every day, and people are like, no more headquarters.
I think Austin is quintessentially what Amazon is. But right, you can use social media as a company to get a sense for a part of the world where you might want to have employees. And so maybe that's the role that social media plays in helping develop a business. And it has nothing to do with necessarily just driving business. We have to encourage and teach folks that.
I really, really like that. And I like talking to our clients about that because I fully agree with you. I think people just want to hand off the rails and say, just send us business, go run, and that might be cutting us off, because there might be a lot of, can we even use Twitter to drive all your sales? Probably not. But B, what can we use it for? If it's not that. And, I think a lot of us work with people with really, really small budgets and kind of tight scopes about what they want from us and from social. But kind of, like you said, having that education component where we talk to them about, the various roles of social media. And I like to go into any meeting with any existing client with a little bit of data that I now know that I didn't know a week ago. And as I talk about all the time here, I am constantly A/B testing everything. So from 1 week to the next, there's never a failed Facebook campaign. There just never isn't. There never is, because there might be a campaign that didn't work, but it didn't work a little bit less relative to the other one. So we can always say, well, we ran these two against each other. We took a little tiny piece of the budget and tried something out, and we didn't drive sales, but what we did do is figure out that, this particular audience demographic is much more responsive to this type of content than this type, or to this type of copy than this type, or when we segment into the audience in this, tweaky way, we got a better response. So we can always come to the phone call or the meeting or the check-in with the client and have learned something.
Yep. Wonderful point. And actually, I love that you brought up A/B testing, because the other way that I run from clients is when they talk to me about the fact that in a few months we're doing a website redesign. That too many businesses still think of a website as a brochure, as a static, permanent fixture of their business, when in reality, we know this, but in reality, you really have to encourage and almost expect that a business that you work with treats their website like a dynamic, living, constantly changing experience. And so if they're not already developed with analytics on their website, not just having Google Analytics there, but they've fleshed out their goal tracking and their event tracking and values and so forth, and constantly doing A/B testing of the pages, or at least willing to start, then we are really kind of setting ourselves up for failure, because you made the point. We need the website to convert if they have expectations, right? And so that means we need to see how or if it converts. We need to be testing and changing the site to convert better. And then we in the marketing channels can do the same to drive more efficient results for the company. But when those two things are separate, right? When you start an engagement and you're happy to just do social media, but you don't have access to their analytics, or they aren't willing to even consider using something like Optimizely, run. Truly, because all you can really do is build fans and send them traffic. And I guarantee you in a few months, they're probably going to be disappointed or frustrated with that, because it's not really what they want. Even if you're good at what you've been doing for them.
And I mean, how many of us can go through our current client list and just totally have a freak out because we realize that a lot of our clients maybe aren't fully on board with this holistic marketing, or maybe we're the only egg in their basket, and how kind of scary and isolating that can be, if they're relying on us for all of these things, that some are in our wheelhouse and some certainly aren't, and kind of knowing our boundaries there. And I talk about that all the time here, you guys. So good. I think we kind of covered this, but I really wanted to talk about this idea of customer validation, especially in the phase of pre-launch startup clients who are kind of going through this at the same time as we are. A lot of times we come in with clients and they've historically done so much, and their content banks are so rich, and they have, a million testimonials across various different platforms, and we have so much content to work with. But sometimes we're coming into it, as they are, or at the same time that they are, and we don't have a lot of this available to us. So how do you what are your best practices for startup clients, for launch clients, and kind of maybe, I don't want to say, we talked a little bit before this started about even beta testing. At what point are you letting your audience in to what you're doing before you even have they're there?
Two thoughts. I always do it before, truly, that we start social media campaigns, we start social media profiles, we start social media content before the business is ready to do anything.
Right.
Because
totally.
we can be talking about the industry, we can be talking about conferences, we can be talking about news, and building this audience and building this engagement. And so the second thought that I have is that I often try to encourage folks to teach our clients, our businesses, that social media is actually much more effective for business development than customer acquisition. That, you're a startup, you've got 2 or 3 people in the company. Those 2 or 3 people have an exceptional skill set and a reputation, some experience. Let's build those out. Let's build out your personal profiles as a CTO, as a technical leader, or as the visionary in the space. And it has nothing to do with the business yet.
Yep.
But we can do that by connecting those individuals with the right people in their industry that matter. Future partners, the investors that might someday fund them, the major conference next year that hopefully we'll be able to get them to speak at. We'll connect them now and then start sharing some of the old talks from that conference or the old keynotes and through their profile, because you're developing these relationships, you're developing this business in a more BD-like, not customer development-like, in a more business development-like way, so that when you turn to that, right, when the business goes live, or when it's time to fill out the speaker profile, or it's time to call the VC, they're not unknown. And actually, you've been paying it forward, right? You've already been supporting them first quite a bit, so that they're at least willing to have a chat, have a conversation about what you're up to. And that's where the idea of the number of fans and engagement is really a form of customer validation for folks. Businesses don't get that. We need to teach them. But if we have an active social profile about something, and active in the sense of engagement, right? That we're getting comments, we're getting shares. It shows that.
I like that you made that clarification, by the way.
What's that?
Active in terms of engagement.
Yeah.
So
not just posting stuff.
Yeah.
Posting stuff is practically a waste of time.
Right.
It is a waste of time.
Yeah.
You have to figure out how to get engagement. You always tag folks, that kind of thing. That engagement then works all of the other business development verticals, that if you get South by Southwest's attention, because hopefully you're going to be speaking next year, you want to speak next year at South by Southwest, I assure you that's going to help when you reach out to an investor and say, hey guys, we're trying to raise money for this thing. And look, South by Southwest is kind of excited about what we're up to, right? And so you got to think about outside the box about business development and nurturing the excitement and interest in what you're doing.
Yeah, and I mean, ideally, it's the long game. Do you have any best practices for a lot of us with, our startup clients we talked about in the beginning? They have limited budgets. At what point should they be bringing us on? And I say that because I've had a couple startup clients who bring us on like pre-launch, and then they run out of money and they never get to launch, and things have kind of fallen apart, and we never even get to flex our muscles because they didn't get that far.
Yep.
So, is there kind of a golden time when it makes sense to just do a deep dive and just ramp up everything on social pre-launch?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great. Well, it's a great question because it's a hard question.
Yeah.
The point that was made that you should run from startups, I think it needs a more nuanced way to think about it. Excuse me. That marketing is the only thing that creates value, right? That premise that Peter Drucker shared. And it's the only thing that distinguishes a business. And so when I work with startups, 9 times out of 10, you've got to invest a little bit more yourself. You've got to give them something. And so I usually give them, I will do your analytics. I'll make sure it works because we know how that works. It takes half an hour to make sure their analytics are set, right? Excuse me. I will make sure that they understand how social media works. And I'll even give them a little playbook. Here, go start doing this stuff. And we'll do an SEO audit. We'll make sure the website works. Those 3 things are what you might think of as the fundamentals that absolutely every business in today's internet era absolutely have to do, or nothing else works. If you think about it, right? If we're not measuring things, if Google can't get in there and we aren't on social media somewhere, wherever that might be, they may as well just not exist. So we do that before they actually do anything else.
Right.
And I do, at least often, just do that because it doesn't take that much work.
Yeah.
Just do that for them. And then what you're doing is you're creating this foundation upon which when things aren't going the way they expected or hoped, or they need to go figure out how to get more money, or they need to start optimizing things to convert customers better. You've got the groundwork there so that it's not your fault that this channel that they hope isn't working. You can point to the fact that, look, we know why it's not working.
Yeah.
We need to go optimize some things, or we need to go talk to this different set of folks, or we need to start these other channels.
Right.
You create this foundation upon which, yeah, they're not going to have much money to hire you to do something tactical. But having that foundation in place enables you to actually then elevate your role, to play a much more strategic role and say, yep, you're right. This thing isn't working. But by the way, here's all the other stuff that we figured out for you. Let's go that direction instead. That might get us customers.
Yeah.
Or we have enough validation here. We should go talk to some investors. Let's go do that. Or look, Google's working better than we thought.
Yeah.
Let's stop doing social media for a bit. Let's start creating more content and writing more articles. You become a more strategic partner because you've invested in them a little bit, frankly. Could they run out of money? Yes, that's the risk we take.
Right.
90% of startups fail. If you want to play in this world, that's just part of the game.
Yeah.
And that's why I think we're having this conversation is that we as marketers have to appreciate and invest in and educate in these businesses so that they understand why and how what we do is so important, simply to get them the money. Not because if they don't get the money, they can't afford us, but because if we don't do these things, you're not getting the money. And then none of us have a job.
Yeah.
Right. So we got to invest and teach them a little bit so that they can get the capital. They can get the resources they need to be successful and to support us.
Yeah, and so those of y'all who have worked with startups, you know it's risky, but it can be high reward. You know, if you get in fast and early, you know. But I do think that it's kind of more work. It's more front stacked, more work on the front end. You know, because it's really all hands on deck, and you're one of the roles, and a lot's kind of expected from you. But I think it can be really fun. We worked on several here, being in Austin, of course. But cool. We had one extra question. I know we're up against the clock now. We've got 2 minutes. It was back when we were talking about, Shelly asked how much needs to be changed on the article when you publish it to LinkedIn. So this is an SEO question, basically, you know, and we've talked, I'm glad that I have you here because this is honestly something I don't know that I think has been asked in here before, which is, you know, specifically talking about LinkedIn Pulse. You know, is it better? Sometimes it's better to, you know, have the blog live, you know, on your own as well as on Pulse, but how do we navigate that duplicate content issue? Yep.
Great question. And sorry, I'm smiling. We're in this studio at Galvanize in Austin, and we've got windows on one side, so we have people watching. You know, it's critical to appreciate really just two things. One, you got to make sure Google understands that the original article lives somewhere else, right? Lives on the domain, and whether that's a link back or that canonical URL that I referenced, you really have to make sure that's there. That's most important. Second, it's actually almost not even an SEO question. It's almost more of a social media question, right? That should the exact same article that I put on my website and the blog be what's on LinkedIn? No. Almost never does that make sense, right? The audience on LinkedIn is a little different. The reason they're following you on LinkedIn is different. I'll take articles a lot of time and use them as a reference. I'll use them to answer questions on Quora. Well, I'm not taking the same article and sticking it on Quora because it doesn't make any sense in the context of answering a question, even though we are answering a question. And so the idea is just be strategic again about those channels and using social media and change it. How much, Shelly? Really just change it sufficiently that it's appropriate to that channel, right? That it's instead maybe a personal point or a personal article on LinkedIn and not just a company article that you post. Most of the content, frankly, can be the same. Add a little paragraph with your personal opinion, add a little note at the end with a personal opinion, maybe change a sentence here or there or a quote there, here or there, and you're good. Worry more about those links than you do about the content actually being vastly different, because as long as the links are there, Google will figure out that you're not trying to publish duplicate content.
Right. And I know a lot of people do that on Pulse, where they'll utilize a portion of the blog and then say, for the rest of this, you know, visit here and link back. Business to Community does that all the time. Several other, you know, third-party platforms for writing. So I think, good, but definitely for LinkedIn, because you're speaking as yourself, so you can definitely take that existing kind of brand or company blog and turn that more into an me style.
Exactly
Yeah.
right.
Well, cool. So Carolyn says, sorting this out, we want good content to be housed on our website and should drive people there. Yet Facebook doesn't like us to drive people out of their ecosystem with links, and reach will be lower. What is the answer? Some post with links and some shorter content posts.
Sort of true, not actually true. What Facebook doesn't like is posts that don't have engagement. I run a group for a neighborhood out here that's got about 20,000 people in it. And I've noticed that when we post something and nobody likes it, nobody comments, nobody shares, only maybe 100 people will even see the article.
Yeah.
It's the engagement that matters.
It's the engagement like the first 10 minutes.
Because it's a diminishing return. Right. So you can get more engagement later, but it won't matter as much.
Yeah.
The links to an article somewhere else aren't as of concern to Facebook, truly. Where it gets a little confusing for folks was the point that we made about video. Facebook absolutely does favor that if you're posting a video, you post it on Facebook.
Yes.
They don't want you sharing a YouTube link or a Vimeo link because they can host the video, right? So if it's something Facebook can host it on Facebook. But even in that case, I'll put a video on Facebook. I'll write a little blurb for Facebook. I'll tag a lot of folks so that they engage. And then I'll still put a link back to the website where we've written a little content related to that video.
Right.
Works just wonderfully.
Yeah.
Absolutely do that, Karen.
Cool. Well, all right. I think we're getting the signals from people on the outside that we're out of time. So thanks so much, you guys. This was a really fun format to be sitting right next to him. Hopefully he doesn't wake up tomorrow morning with the flu.
It's startup week here, so I've got a late night. We got happy hour tonight.
Yeah, that would be really bad.
Early morning.
Really, really bad. I can speak from experience. So thanks all you guys for joining, and we will see you next week with Linan talking about what we talked a little bit about today, which is taking one post and making it work on various platforms, but absolutely not sharing one thing every single time in the exact same way.
Really important point.
Yes. Thanks so much, you guys. We'll see you next week.